Hi everyone, this is Pete here. Just want to do a very quick update and run through on the Square's latest earnings Q4 2020. Now this came out right after the market closed, and guess what? The market reacted very negatively. Square already down 5% during the market period, and right after market it dropped another 4%. So right now I want to run through with you and let's see if the market is justified in reducing share price of Square by so much, close to 10% in one single day. All right. So the first thing is let's do a quick breakdown. Now the revenue for Square is up 141% to $3.16 billion, and this is already excluding revenue from Bitcoin. Then it will be 1.4 billion, which is still up about 23% year on year. Right? And I think this is super important because guys, when Square sells Bitcoin on their Cash App, people don't actually pay them that much. Later we'll look at the profit margin, right? It's actually really low, all right? So therefore, when you take into revenue into consideration, do remove the Bitcoin revenue. Now, let's break the business down even further. So when we look at Cash App, how much did it deliver? It delivers $376 million and is a 162% year-on-year gross profit growth, right? And in terms of seller ecosystem, it developed 427 million. So actually, seller ecosystem still providing larger part of the profit right now. However, you can see that the growth is not as exponential. It's only 13% year-on-year for gross profit. So what about Bitcoin? How much does Bitcoin actually bring for Square? And you can see that for $4.5 billion worth of Bitcoin revenue that Cash App generated in 2020 last year, only 97 million of it is in gross profit. So this is not chump change. 97 million is still a good sum of money, but the gross profit margin is very low, close to 2% only, which is why we excluded the revenue from Bitcoin as a considerable Bitcoin. Okay, let's go deeper than that. So one key thing that I realized is that the high growth in Cash App, right? There's two parts to Cash App. One is the transaction-based revenue, which is from the merchant that is collecting payments on Cash App from their people, customers they are buying, and also subscription services. For example, if you deposit money into Cash App or you use the cash card to pay for things, there's a little bit of transaction fee there, all right? And you can see that both of them growing at exponential rate. Transaction-based revenue grew by 234%. Subscription and service-based grew by 113%. However, guys, I want to bring your attention is that while the transaction-based growth is super high, all right, for Cash App, but do take note, it's a much smaller amount, all right? It is only 71 million for the last quarter. However, subscription-based and services revenue accounts for 344 million. So the majority of the revenue from Cash App actually comes from subscription and service-based. So this is very important for people to keep on putting money into Cash App. And we'll come back to this later, why this is so important and how this ties in with Bitcoin, okay? And also just want to highlight also, right, the seller ecosystem is still making very good revenue, all right? For example, over here you can see 857 million, subscription is $105 million, okay? So overall gross profit, while seller ecosystem is still higher, but definitely you can see that Cash App is catching up really fast, all right, compared to year on year. The overall total revenue, actually gross profit went up by 162, sorry, not revenue. Gross profit went up by 162%, all right, as compared to seller ecosystem, all right, 162 only went up by 13%, okay? So go into more numbers, all right, guys, I love numbers because numbers tells a story, okay? So what is the story here? Now the story here is very interesting. It is, first line over here, the gross processing volume is basically the seller ecosystem, right? Businesses that use Square as a mode of collecting payment, all right, either the till or the cash card swiping system, okay? And you can see that there was a huge decrease in June in the volume, all right, due to COVID. A lot of the brick and mortar store that was responsible for this sort of revenue actually had to shut down for a period of time, or in fact, they didn't even come back. However, we did see the increase, all right, of this revenue from September onwards. So that is very encouraging. And on top of that, we see that the mix of larger sellers, all right, sellers that are selling more than 100 larger seller, 125K gross processing volume, is actually getting higher and higher. So that's great news. And also their mid-market, higher than 500K sellers are up 30%, up to 30% right now of the overall. So this is fantastic news, all right? So generally, I would say the majority of Square seller ecosystem sellers are actually of the larger volume sellers. Okay, so that's great. Okay, they're not just attracting the SME anymore, they are attracting bigger businesses. Now let's go to the exciting part, which is actually Cash App. So you can see over here, Cash App revenue has been increasing, okay? And even if you take away the Bitcoin revenue, right, it is 415 million, and that is still more than a good 100%, all right, as compared to year on year in 2019. Okay, so I think the market is very disappointed with this result because it is slightly lower than September 2020, and it wasn't as high as they wanted it to be. So when they take away the Bitcoin revenue, they were a bit disappointed. They're like, oh, you know, it didn't go as high as compared to last quarter. But if you compare year on year, actually it's a huge improvement. It's a huge increase from 183 million to 415 million in revenue. Okay, so let's continue further. So this is to give you a very quick snapshot. This is actually from their annual shareholders letter, and you can see that Cash App gross profit is 377 million, up 162% year on year, all right, compared to fourth quarter in 2019. And let's look at the net income. I think this is super critical because this is the first time, all right, second quarter in a row, okay, that they made money, 294 million. But take note, all right, there is a 247 million related gain on equity investment. So if you take that out, you know, the business is still making just a little bit of money in terms of $20 over million, but that's a good step in the correct direction, okay? So like I said before, seller ecosystem gross profit is still the higher one right now, but it's only at 13% year on year, okay? So one key thing that I really want to focus on is the Cash App user growth. Okay, this is going to be the main driver for Square moving forward. So Square right now is focusing a lot of attention on their Cash App. And right now they have 36 million monthly active user, all right, on Cash App. And this is 50% year-on-year growth. And I love this. You want to see this in a high growth company where the adoption level is increasing at a 50% rate. Okay, now there's a lot of talk about Square buying Bitcoin, and in fact Square just announced just now that they bought another $170 million worth of Bitcoin, and they want to hold it for long term. Now a lot of people ask me, why is Square buying Bitcoin? How is it relevant? Now I don't exactly talk to Jack Dorsey, but I can do an inference to think about why they went for Bitcoin, and my conclusion is that Bitcoin is actually quite a brilliant move. Let me explain why. Okay, now what is the Bitcoin purpose in Square, right? Is it to make money? No, not really, right? Just now we saw that they only made about $4.5 billion, $4.5 billion in revenue, but the overall gross profit is only 97 million. And this is gross, right? You haven't minus out some of the other costs, maybe it's even lower than that. The net profit will be even less, right? So it's really only about 2% gross profit margin. So why is Square taking on such a low profit margin business? It doesn't make sense, right? Now, the thing is this is all about customer acquisition, okay? Because during the conference call, they talked about in the fourth quarter, the Bitcoin volume per customer increased by 2.5 times compared to last year, okay? And this is mainly driven by existing and new customers. Okay, and they talked about in 2020, in fact, more than 3 million customers, okay, bought or sold Bitcoin on Cash App, all right, and just in January alone, there's another 1 million customers who bought Bitcoin on Cash App for the very first time. So it is really about complementing the whole ecosystem, right? It is about increasing the attractiveness of Cash App as an app, right? You can do everything there. You can not just buy and sell things. You can not just make payment. You can even buy Bitcoin. You can even buy stocks right now, even ETF, okay? So why is this so important? Because just now, remember, we talked about subscription and service-based growth, and this is one of their highest intake, all right, compared to transaction-based, right? So this is mainly transaction fee driven by what they call as Insta deposit and cash card. All right. So when people put money in Cash App, there's actually a little fee that Cash App takes. So it's very important that Square continues to attract people onto the platform, make it as sticky as possible, right? To attract more money transfer onto Cash App, therefore arriving at more transaction fee. So as a business decision, even if they were to offer Bitcoin, okay, not offer Bitcoin for free, but offer Bitcoin transaction for free, it will work because it will help to make the platform ever so more sticky. Okay, and the very fact that right now, even though Bitcoin is more of an ecosystem customer acquisition tool, it is making some profit. It is making $97 million of gross profit. So that is not too bad, right? It's a marketing tool that actually makes money. So to me, that is a brilliant move. Okay, so what's the Bitcoin impact on the future Square income statement? It is actually very similar to what Tesla is going through, right? If you have watched my previous video on Tesla buying Bitcoin, but here I'll go through again, right? Because in the financial statement, Bitcoin is actually seen as an indefinite-lived intangible asset. So what does it mean? It means that, okay, if there's a decline in the price, all right, they need to have record impairment of loss, okay, impairment of losing money, okay. However, the subsequent reversal of such an impairment is prohibited until the sale. So what does it mean? That means if the company holds on to the investment and the price drop, the company income statement will be affected, right? For example, if Bitcoin, they bought 170 million worth, right? And if Bitcoin drops by, let's say, 70 mil, right? I don't know, okay? They will literally get to account it as a loss, $70 million worth of loss on the income statement, and potentially not having to pay tax. And that will make their financial balance sheet looks very bad. But actually, it doesn't affect the business because this is a net asset write-down. However, if Bitcoin subsequently improve in price, increase back to 170 million again, they are not allowed, all right, prohibited to recognize this profit until they sell the Bitcoin. And over here, they talk about Square already purchased 50 million in the past, in the fourth quarter, and they intend to hold it for the foreseeable future, right? So they talk about the last statement right now, there is no impairment loss, but there's no guarantee that this impairment loss will not come in the future. So to me, this is kind of a good news. Why? Because if Bitcoin prices fluctuate violently and cause Square's income statement to look bad, and if the Wall Street gave it a very poor rating due to that because they see that, oh, the EPS is very low, and Squares get sell off, that is when I want to go in to get Square, to buy Square. Because think about it, this is an impairment. That means what? There is no actual cash flow out of the company. This is just writing down of value, all right? And the thing is, they don't have to recognize the profit back up when the Bitcoin price go back up again. So I think this is a fantastic news, okay? So overall, this is the overall revenue, financial statement, and the gross profit for each segment. What I want to highlight is here. Okay, looking at year-end December 2020, you can see that for the Cash App, subscription is the main base, whereas seller, the transaction with merchant is the main base. So it's very good. This is a very synergistic ecosystem where Cash App work with individual, right? We put in money and Cash App takes a cut, and then the seller ecosystem serves the merchant when the merchant does a transaction with the client and then Square takes a cut. So I think this is fantastic, very good complementary ecosystem here, okay? So last but not least, let's go through cash flow because cash flow still matters and this is the lifeblood of the business. So if you look at cash flow from operating activities, it is actually very healthy, still positive 381 million, okay? And one thing is I look at the financing because they are doing a lot of investment, right? They are buying a lot of Bitcoin and stuff. So I want to know, hey guys, where's the money coming from? And in 2020, guess what? They raised 2 billion, okay? This will have multiplied by 1,000, that's what, 2 billion, of what we call a convertible senior note. Now, for those of you who don't understand what this is, don't worry, I'm here to share with you what it exactly means. So, what is a convertible senior note? Now, a convertible senior note is very simple. It is basically saying that, sorry, let me go back. It's basically saying that you will get to be paid a certain interest every year if you buy this note. It's like a bond. But why is it called convertible? It's because at the end of the period, you get to exchange this note into a Square share, all right? So let's say if the convertible note is priced at, let's say, $200, for example, right? And if Square, at the end of the day, remains high at $300, at the end of this period, you get to bring this note to Square and say, I would like to redeem my one Square share, which is currently worth $300, okay? So this is actually a very good debt to have because they are actually creating debt through equity and they're not paying for it. Okay, why are they not paying for it? Because take a look at this. November, they issued 1.15 billion. Okay, this will expire in 2026, 2027. All right, and take note, 2026 has no interest. That means the person is literally lending money to Square without any interest. And the 2027 one, slightly better, is a 0.25% interest. Okay, and where is the other 1 billion from? Well, the other 1 billion is actually here, where they issue in March, all right, and the interest payment is even better, better for Square, 0.125%. Okay, so I love it. Square is using the current environment whereby interest rate is very low, and they're just raising a lot of cash, all right, so that when the rainy day comes, they have all the tools and the cash to deploy. Okay, I love this. I love this. So I want to make sure that they weren't taking on too much debt they cannot finance, okay? So last but not least, let's come to valuation. First thing is this, valuation is always very tricky, very subjective, all right? So I'm just going to do a DCF for Square, and I realized that, hey, if I take a 15-year 30% growth, which is quite reasonable for Square because look at their cash app is growing at like 40-50% for the last few years, all right? If I predict this, then actually right now, even at $256, is still quite overpriced. It's still quite overpriced, so that's not great, okay? However, if I just change the growth rate to about 35%, then actually, whoa, the fair value become 291, and therefore it is a good purchase. So right now, I'm kind of torn between those two. I'm more inclined towards 30%, and that makes me feel that Square is a little bit overvalued. But full disclosure, I do own Square shares and Square options right now, and that's because I think with the current market floating up, right, it's going to bring Square prices up further as well. Okay, so on the absolute valuation basis, it's definitely an overvalued situation. So do take note of that. Position size your portfolio accordingly. Okay, so the next thing I would like to use is a price to sales ratio. Now, this is once again related to Bitcoin. Remember, price to sales ratio, we want to take out the Bitcoin revenue because the Bitcoin revenue is not exactly profit generating, okay? So what I want to do is just do a very quick comparison. So right now, market cap for Square is about 123 billion of sorts, all right? Maybe if tonight drop a bit, this will get a bit better. And the sales without Bitcoin, if I extrapolate it, is about $5 billion each year, okay? $5 billion each year, and that brings us to a price to sales ratio of 24 times. Now, if I look at PayPal, PayPal is like 14 times, so actually PayPal looks like a better buy in this case. But if I look at Visa and MasterCard, these two old-time payment companies, they are actually still trading at 21 times, which is amazing, right? That means price to sales ratio for Square at 24 times is actually quite close to the price to sales ratio of Visa and MasterCard, even though they don't have much growth ahead of them, right? Square definitely has much more growth ahead of them compared to Visa and MasterCard. So the thing is, are you willing to pay for growth, all right? So this is my understanding of Square and how it works. Okay. So right now we're at the chart. This is Square's chart, and you can see that Square, when we last talked about it, was around 60, and then now it blew all the way up to 256. So for those of you who went in with me, congratulations, we are at 400% up. But right now there's a bit of retracement, but yet it's not touching the long-term 20 moving average yet. Okay, so if I were to look at the more near term, it is at the 20 moving average sign. All right, let me just bring this a bit closer. Okay, so right now what I'm waiting for Square is that, waiting for sign of entry. So sign of entry is what? Sign of entry is a bounce at the support, right? I want to see the MACD giving me a ping situation like here, but we're not seeing that yet. And actually stochastics is just at the bought region. Now it's coming down. So right now I do see a bit more downside for Square going forward. So therefore I'm not going to chase, right? I'm just going to wait for Square to come back down a little bit before I go in. Now, what can we do? Go into Square. Very simple. There's three things you can do. First is, of course, you can buy shares. And then second thing is you can actually sell put options. Square's premium for put options now is very, very attractive, right? But once again, do sell it at the support level. And last but not least, of course, you can apply your strategy X and your strategy X plus on Square as well. Okay? So guys, overall, I think Square is doing a very good job. It is a bit pricey on the valuation side, but otherwise, this is a fantastic company executing like crazy, and we'll look forward to the next earnings call for Square. Okay? So guys, hope you guys learned a lot from this session. Any questions, let me know, put in the comments below, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.